In this week's EV news, the UK breaks the 1 million barrier for electric vehicle registrations. IONITY issue a stark warning over potential fraud on their charging network. Newcastle City Council come under fire for their decrepit EV charging points. And the government extends the plug-in car grant scheme. Sort of. Welcome back to another EV news. Still not quite got that regular rhythm nailed down, but I've been pretty busy with AMI stuff recently, in case you hadn't noticed. There's quite a lot to cover this week, so we'll get straight into it, but do make sure you click like, and if you haven't already, subscribe to make sure you don't miss the next instalment. First up, the UK has surpassed 1 million plug-in vehicle registrations. SMMT announced the sales figures for September 2022, which consisted of 225,269 new registrations in total. 38,116 of those were fully electric vehicles, which represents the second highest monthly volume in history, and 12,281 were plug-in hybrids. September is of course a very important month for the UK car market, being a plate change month. Some people still put an awful lot of importance on having the latest registration number on their car, so they'll purposefully wait for the new plate to come out before taking delivery. That means we'll tend to see bumper numbers in September and in March, which is the other plate change month. Compared with 2021 sales, full battery electric vehicles are up 16.5%, while plug-in hybrids are actually down 11.5%. I do wonder what those figures would look like if availability was better though. People are waiting an awful long time for deliveries at the moment due to those ongoing part and component shortages, which continue to strangle the market. 175,614 battery electric vehicles and 73,961 plug-in hybrids have been sold to date in 2022, taking the UK over the 1 million mark for plug-in car registrations. A total of 1,002,157 have been sold from January 2010 to September 2022. Mike Hawes, who's SMMT's chief executive, said, "September has seen Britain's millionth electric car reach the road, an important milestone in the shift to zero-emission mobility. Battery electric vehicles make up but a small fraction of cars on the road though, so we need to ensure every lever is pulled to encourage motorists to make the shift if our green goals are to be met." The overall market remains weak, however, as supply chain issues continue to constrain model availability. Whilst the industry is working hard to address these issues, the long-term recovery of the market also depends on robust consumer confidence and economic stability. That's actually a very interesting point, isn't it? I think it'll be very interesting to see how these sales figures hold up as we go forward. As I'm sure you're aware, things are very turbulent economically at the moment, and there's every chance consumer confidence is going to be hit by that, and consumer spending is going to be held back significantly. I do wonder if we will start to see manufacturers actually have excess stock. If that's the case, after this long period of not actually having any stock to deliver, people stop buying, you might start seeing, pre-registered cars and stuff like that again. Let me know what you think in the comments. Next up, an important message from IONITY about safety on their charging network. I was a little bit surprised to see this, but it makes a lot of sense when you think about it. For those who have never used IONITY, one of the ways that you can start a charge on their network is to scan a QR code on the unit. So scan it with your phone and it takes you to their payment gateway. Enter your payment details and you can start a charge. Simple enough, I suppose, but why they don't use contactless payment is beyond me, but charging operators seem hell-bent on making weird and wonderful ways to make our lives more difficult. I'm not sure why, they just do. Anyway, the official IONITY Twitter account posted this warning of fraudulent activities. "We have been made aware that QR codes displayed on some of our chargers may be manipulated by fraudsters and lead customers to payment websites which are not related to IONITY. When scanning the QR code for direct payment, please make sure that you are redirected to the official IONITY payment website, which is payment.ionity.eu. It's a really straightforward exploit if you think about it. You rock up to a charger, fairly unattended device, stick a new label on it on top of the existing QR code with a malicious QR code that directs you to your own payment gateway. You steal the payment details, display an error at the end of the transaction, redirect to the real gateway, and then the user just tries again. They'll start a charge, none the wiser. You've got the card details, and the first they'll know about it is when fraudulent transactions appear on their account. Advising that people check that they're being sent to the right website is a start, I suppose, and it's all well and good. But to be honest, I think the real answer is to phase out the use of QR codes for this purpose. It's far too easily manipulated, and it heavily relies on the user being very aware of what they're doing, checking they're being sent to the right website, which, from my time working in cybersecurity, I can tell you it very rarely actually happens, that a user is that aware. Even better would be not only to scrap those QR codes, get rid of them for good, but to put contactless on all of their charges, making it easy for everybody. Contrary to popular belief, you can't actually currently pay using contactless at IONITY, and introducing it would be a massive, massive increase in how easy they were to use. In the meantime though, if you need to use IONITY, use the IONITY app, or even better, use something like Octopus Electric Universe or Bonnet, which both give you discounts. And be very, very careful where you're scanning QR codes, no matter what they're for, but especially if they're going to lead you to something that is going to ask you for payment details. Newcastle City Council are coming under fire for their decrepit EV charging points throughout the city and their failure to find someone to maintain them. This is a huge issue that many councils seem to be experiencing. They've had a load of chargers installed years and years ago, they failed to put proper maintenance in place, and of course now they're being used an awful lot. They're breaking down and they're just sitting there rotting away. Nobody's looking after them. They're disappointing everybody and they're massively hindering people's transition to electric vehicles, because if all you see is that your local chargers never work, well, you're not going to be convinced, are you? Council chiefs have been urged to take action to improve the number of functioning stations in Newcastle. After years of complaints about public charging points being out of action, Liberal Democrat councillor Greg Stone has accused North East authorities of a serious policy failure this week, telling colleagues that he had been informed more than a year ago that much of Newcastle's broken EV technology was obsolete and unable to be maintained due to a lack of spare parts or a lack of funding. Earlier this year, the leaders approved a new North East zero emission vehicle policy which stated that the number of EV chargers in the region would need to increase from just 800 to as many as 28,000 over the coming years to meet the rapidly accelerating demand. But Councillor Stone revealed at a Newcastle City Council meeting on Wednesday that a procurement exercise for a 15-year contract to maintain and expand the North East charging network failed to attract a single bid because it was so onerous and poorly structured. Several Lib Dems asked the Labour-run council to invest in tech that would allow electric vehicles to be plugged into lampposts, while Councillor Gareth Kane claimed that the decrepit state of the charging network is symptomatic of 8 years of drift. Sounds a little bit like party politics here rather than addressing the real issue, but you know. Councillor Paul Frew, the council's cabinet member for finance, replied that the delays to the region-wide contract had been unfortunate, but that the offer was being restructured before retendering begins. He also confirmed that transport officials have looked at installing lamppost chargers, but it is too complex. The Labour councillor told the Local Democracy Reporting Service after the meeting that the Lib Dems did not establish a maintenance programme for EV points that were installed when they ran the council pre-2011, and pointed to budget cuts in local government since that time. This entire situation is just absolutely farcical, isn't it? These councils have thrown all this infrastructure in over the years and spent all this money, but they've made absolutely no provision for maintenance. I don't know if they've been sold down the river by the companies that have installed these in the first place and they've been told, oh, don't worry about it, it doesn't need any maintenance, just install them, it'll be absolutely fine. Or whether it's just absolute ignorance all round, a case of them burying their heads in the sand, but something needs to give here. I've seen people call for regulation in the EV charging market, benchmarking uptime and penalising people for missing agreed SLAs, and I can't help but think that that might be one way to solve this issue. But let me know what you think in the comments. I'm sure there will be some very, very strong opinions on this one. I'm not always sure that regulation is the answer. And finally, the government have announced the return of the plug-in car grant. Sort of. The grant was axed completely with very little notice earlier this year, much annoying people who were just about to buy an EV, but also pleasing those who disagree with government subsidies for private motoring, subsidising those who are buying very expensive vehicles. It's a bit of a mixed bag and it's a bit of a controversial subject. And there's been a lot of miscommunication about this recent announcement. So it doesn't actually mean that you can now go back to getting £1,500 off a new electric vehicle. So don't get too excited. What has actually been announced is that the window for dealers placing orders where they're facing extended lead times and perhaps have been a bit lax with their paperwork and haven't put the vehicle on the system, or they just haven't turned up yet, they can claim the grant for an extended period of time for vehicles they've already taken orders for. It has no direct impact on consumers, but dealers can claim the grant for vehicles where their customers are no doubt expecting the grant, and for vehicles logged on the system between the 14th of June 2021 and the 31st of March 2023. But to confirm, the consumer window for the grant has not been extended. So if you're expecting to now walk into a dealership today and buy an EV and qualify for the grant and the £1,500 discount, you're going to be sorely disappointed. And the way that this has been reported by some of the press makes it look a little bit like that, but it's definitely not the case. This affects dealers only. That's all we've got time for this week's EV news. Many thanks for watching as always, and I'll see you next time.